In the air, brilliantly caught, Jimmy Adams.
I grew up playing quite a few sports. Played a bit of football, or quite a lot of football growing up. But it was the sort of typical experience for boys in Jamaica, where even from primary school, you'd play, over the course of the year, you'd play football until Christmas. Then you'd have a couple months of track and field, and then you'd finish the school year with cricket. And I think most boys growing up in Jamaica, whether in the cities or in rural Jamaica, would have been exposed to those three sports. So as a matter of course, you played those three sports. By the time I got to high school, I had a special love for football, and I wasn't that bad a player. And I played through school age group teams right through until I was about 16. But then I got drafted into the selection process for the national senior first class team, cricket team. And that was when I had to make a decision, because the preparation period for our first class season actually cut into or coincided with the schoolboy football season. And the coach at the time, Ruan Kanai, was very clear that there would be no mixing of sports with his program. Either I would fully commit to his cricket program, or I was free to go and play football. It was a tough decision, because to this day I still have more of a passion for football than cricket. But there was a part of me that realized that at the time, in the early 80s or in the mid 80s, the best that you could get from football, being a Jamaican, was probably a free scholarship to a university in the States. And that might pretty much be the end of it. It's not like you have now, where people from the Caribbean and from Africa can actually see themselves playing professionally in Europe and places like that. We didn't have those options, and I thought, based on where I was cricket-wise, that I could actually get onto a world stage playing cricket. So in terms of the passion that I had for it, it wasn't easy, but it was an easy decision when I broke it down as to why I was going to, or what parameters I was going to use to make the decision. And I didn't see myself getting onto a world stage in football, but I had a vision of that happening in cricket, hence the reason why I ended up going down the cricket route. Where did I start playing club cricket? Really and truly, the only cricket club that I've ever been a member of is Kingston Cricket Club, which is where we are here. You should consider yourself fortunate to be in such a hallowed place. But why? I was playing schools cricket in my early years at high school, and the coach at the time was associated with Kingston Cricket Club. And it was just an invitation from him to come down and see if this was an experience that I would want to get involved in. Came down for a week of practicing with the teams that they had here at the time, and I've been a member ever since. So I played all my club cricket here prior to playing professional cricket in clubs overseas. But I've never, in terms of club cricket in Jamaica, I've never moved clubs. So I've been here since the age of about 12 or 13, since the early 80s. And it's been where I would have put in performances to have been considered for selection for the national team. And it's been a good association. I've certainly enjoyed being a member here, and I'd like to think that they're pretty happy with what I've achieved while I've been a member here. And still continue to support the club, whether I'm overseas or at home. Unfortunately, too old now to play, but I still enjoy hanging out here. And obviously, when we have big cricket events, it's nice to come here and catch up with friends who hopefully I've played with over the last many years. When I started my first class career in '85, it was an interesting period in Caribbean cricket, because going back to the early 80s, Lawrence Rowe had started doing tours with rebel teams to South Africa, and quite a few Jamaican players who were regulars during that period left and went on those rebel tours. What I'm saying now, I'm saying more with hindsight than anything else. At the time, I was too young to appreciate what was happening. I was sort of caught up in living a dream, being able to play for the national team while still in school. I do think that I would not have been able to have made a Jamaica team had the Rebels not gone to South Africa. People like Lawrence Rowe, Herbert Chang, Richard Austin, Everton Mattis, they were still young, fairly young in cricketing sense, and would probably have played for Jamaica for easily another 6, 7, 8 years maybe, because they were fit lads. And it might have blocked my opportunities. So in hindsight, I would say the Rebel Tours helped me. In terms of the effect on Caribbean cricket, I think it would have probably had an overall negative effect in a sense, because I think one of the issues we're seeing now with West Indies cricket is the falling standard of our first class competition, and the Rebel Tours took the second layer of players away from our domestic cricket. Obviously the first team players were with Clive Lloyd wherever they were touring, but that next tier that would have kept the standard to a certain level were all gone to South Africa. So I think looking back, there was a drop in the standards of our domestic cricket that probably wasn't felt for a few years after, even though it created opportunities for some of us, and I was one of the beneficiaries. I do think it lowered the standard a little bit. My views on the lads who went to South Africa, non-judgmental. I can understand the economics of the time. Cricket wasn't, even for the guys playing international cricket, the temptations were great because of the scale of what was being laid out for them to go to South Africa. And even a few who were playing with Clive Lloyd at the time said it was a very tempting offer that they got, even though they decided not to go. But for the lads who were at the tier below, who were strictly amateurs now, because I would say even now the Caribbean first-class cricket is still at an amateur level, they were facing potential payments that they'd never seen ever and would probably never see again, and most of them realized that they would never play international cricket again. So I can quite understand the economics behind it. I try not to moralize when I look at the situation, and I wouldn't even be brave enough to ask myself if I would have gone if I was in their position. I don't know, but non-judgmental, I think they did what they thought they had to do. Thankfully, all of them have been sort of accepted back into West Indian society and West Indies cricket, because the life ban was lifted maybe about 8 or 9 years after they went, which I thought was a good thing. And a couple of them even got back into a West Indies squad. I think Ezra Mosley went on to play Test cricket for the West Indies, which I thought was good for cricket, for West Indies cricket. But I do think that overall, if you ask the question again, what was the overall impact of the Rebel Tours, I think it did weaken West Indies cricket, but it might not have been seen at the time, because the West Indies team at that time was winning everywhere and against everybody. So I don't think anybody paid that much attention to the long-term consequences of those fellas going off to South Africa. Moving away from the Rebel Tours in '82 to my debut, which was against South Africa, they'd just been readmitted into world cricket. They'd beaten us in the World Cup about 3 months prior to them coming to the Caribbean, knocked us out of the World Cup. And that left a bit of a bitter taste in the mouths of quite a few Caribbean people. But we knew enough about the cricket to realize that they had a strong team.
As did Monty Lynch.
Their domestic cricket was very strong, and the domestic cricket obviously had been helped by the Rebel Tours 10 years earlier. I mean, it was an interesting debut because the test match was boycotted in Barbados because there was a Barbadian fast bowler who had been omitted from the final 11. So, interestingly, it was played in front of nobody. There was only the West Indies squad and the South African squad and their supporters who came to the Kensington Oval in Barbados. But it didn't take away my excitement. Obviously, it was not the culmination, because there are a lot more goals that I wanted to achieve, but certainly I played first-class cricket since 1985, so it was 7 years after a first-class debut that I was playing international cricket. So just putting on that maroon cap and walking out for the first time, and to be in the same team as people who I'd considered legends, Desmond Haynes,
that's a lovely shot.
Ambrose.
Well bowled, gone, superb bowling, beautiful bowling and a good catch.
Walsh.
Bolt played it on.
Richie Richardson.
Edge, oh what a catch! What a fantastic catch, going to hit that.
Very hard to describe, but just suffice to say, very, very excited. Didn't sleep for 5 days, or 6 days, because we had, in those days we had rest days in test matches, which they've long since done away with. And it was an interesting game. On the last morning, the odds were heavily stacked in favour of a South African win, and Walsh and Ambrose went to work and bowled us to an improbable victory. I did fairly well in the test as well, which was personally very satisfying. And to this day, I do think that the Barbadian public missed out on what was a very, very exciting game. But that's their loss. They made the choice not to come and support the team for their reasons. But dream come true for myself. Thoroughly enjoyable at the end, because certainly for 4 days on the rest day I thought that we were going to lose a test match. And I got a very early insight into what you can do when you have a very potent bowling attack, which we had in those days and which we had for a few more years after that. And yeah, it was a dream start to test cricket for me. It was an interesting career because of the opportunities that I got along the way to explore almost every aspect of the game. Primarily selected as a batsman throughout my career, whether it be one-day cricket or test cricket. But by the time I got into the test team, I'd kept wicket for Jamaica. I'd gotten wickets for Jamaica bowling spin.
It's going to be the left-arm orthodox spinner, Jimmy Adams, now from the Paddington end. Oh, that's got to be plumb. Yes, he's got him there with the arm ball. Glenn McGrath padding up to one that he thought was going to spin, but that just went straight on with the arm. Clever piece of bowling there by Jimmy Adams, and he's brought to an end Glenn McGrath's highest test inning.
And I enjoyed just being a part of the game in any capacity. So as a half-decent fielder as well in most positions.
He's got him, what a catch! That is a gem, a classic. Jimmy Adams does the job, Warren flinging it away, and Adams takes a gem at short leg. Superb catching.
That was excellent work by Jimmy Adams.
There's a huge difference between my performance levels in the first half of my career.
Thomas in the air, Jimmy Adams running back with the ball. Will we get to it? He's getting under it. Oh my word, what a catch. What a classic. Two great catches tonight. And I think he's nearly knocked himself out, the skipper. 110% of desperation, and he's in a bit of trouble.
Well, it's a real shame, Jimmy Adams. I hope there's nothing serious there.
It was frustrating because at the time, that second half period, I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't put a finger on it. Spent a lot of time looking at more technical issues. But I would have to say the answer now becomes hindsight more than anything else, because they've done enough studies now and speaking to people who are in that field. That sort of 93 to 95 period, I pretty much played for 2 years non-stop. And it got to a point where on the 95 tour of England, it was just burnout, plain and simple. But I think the long-term effect of it was that, and again, this is hindsight, at the time I knew something wasn't right, but you didn't know what it was.
Gone. Straight to Slater. Short. Just miscued. He'll be very disappointed with that, will Jimmy Adams?
I couldn't carry a series anymore. I couldn't carry 5 tests anymore. Mentally couldn't do it. So most of my performances came in 3 test series, where you had maybe 1 or 2 good performances. But 5 test series became a real struggle for me, and it started from that period. They've done enough studies now to show that these are issues that, although if identified early, you can correct them and not keep sliding down that slope. But I think by the time I got to the end of the 95 season, having been on the road for 2 years, playing first class and international cricket as well as county cricket, I'd gotten to the point where severe burnout had crept into my game. And in hindsight now I can safely say that mentally I wasn't the same player ever again after that. Found it very difficult to do the longer tours, the 3 months tours. Began getting tired. Mentally I could feel it, mentally tired very quickly on a tour. Where prior to that, you're almost like an Energizer bunny. You get to the end of a tour and you're looking forward to the next tour. So there are little things that I could remember, and when I related some of these issues to people who are now specialists in the field, they said, well, classic case of. But there was nobody at the time who knew about it, so there was nobody to turn to, there's no information on it. But there was this sense of frustration of knowing that something inside wasn't right, desperately searching for answers, because you knew, you sort of had this feeling inside that I should be dominating consistently like I used to, and it wasn't happening. Very frustrating.
Amidst indescribable tension, they inch closer to the target. Adams finally squirting a 2 on the leg side to bring the scores level.
West Indies cannot lose. It's the first time the West Indies captain has allowed himself.
The West Indies board asked me to take over the team in 2000, just prior to a home series against, I think it was Pakistan and Zimbabwe. A little bit of a surprise. We'd had a bad series previously in New Zealand when Brian was captain, and Brian opted to take a break from the game for a while, stating stress-related issues. Was I ready for captaincy? I think I was as ready as I would ever have been. I'd been on the circuit now for 8-9 years. I'd played enough test matches and ODIs.
West Indies have won by 1 wicket. An amazing test match.
I'd captained the team before on a few occasions in the Caribbean just prior to the '99 World Cup when Lara had been injured in that series against Australia. Won a few games as captain. So I'd had a taste of it before. So I was more excited, looking forward to the challenge. We had a young team at the time, a team that was certainly going to spend the next few years in transition. And I just saw it as an exciting opportunity, and it was going to be a new experience for me. So it was something that I think I was ready to take it on board. In terms of the captaincy, I was captain for a year, and it ended at the end of the series against Australia, where we lost all the test matches. And in terms of my own personal form,
highlighted the panic. West Indian captain Jimmy Adams being just as culpable in not sending the youngster back.
Umpire replay. How can you believe what he's done?
I didn't have a particularly good series either. So came back home with no wins, not enough runs scored on the tour.
Gone for a high ball, he's getting around as a McGrath. It's going to be a good catch if he takes it, he's under it. It's 11 wins in a row. Well caught by Glenn McGrath. He's had a wonderful match, and a very good team wins this test match easily. In
terms of losing the captaincy, as a 33-year-old, you realize that if you at that age, if you're not scoring runs consistently, it's very difficult for people to keep investing in you. You're at an age now where you have to be producing consistently, or they're going to find a young player to invest in. So in terms of a surprise for both captaincy and losing a place in the team, not really. I'd been around West Indies cricket long enough. I'd been around international cricket long enough to know that this is what comes with the territory. And you get into, you're starting to approach mid-30s. If you're not turning out runs consistently, then it's very hard to demand a place in any international team. And the West Indies at the time was no different. There were a crop of good young batsmen who were knocking on the door: Marlon Samuels, Sarwan, Hines, Gale, and all of them were supremely talented players. So as to whether it was a surprise, not really. It happens. It happened to people before me. One of the perks for anybody playing international cricket, certainly in that time, was an opportunity to travel. Cricket obviously being played in the British Commonwealth, so you got a chance to go pretty far and wide. So the UK obviously the islands in and around the Caribbean that played cricket, the English-speaking islands, and then further afield, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, India, Canada, Malaysia. Again, it's part of the dream. You know, I remember being a child listening to radio commentary from some of these places, dreaming about probably one day being able to play and for people to listen to me playing as well. And like I said, it was part of the dream that you got to live, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing different cultures. I enjoyed playing in all of these destinations. Any game that had the title international was something that I totally enjoyed. And the venue, when I say the venue was neither here nor there, to me it was a buzz of international cricket, but all these venues were very specific and particular in their own way, different cultures, the crowds were different in an exciting way. And it was just a very broad experience for somebody who grew up in a very small town in Port Maria to see a lot of these places and experience these cultures at a fairly young age. But I think for me, playing in the big grounds, so a huge moment, when you talk about excitement, and I don't think I'm the only player who would say this, but the chance to play in the big grounds, the 100,000 grounds, capacity grounds, your MCGs and the Eden Gardens in Calcutta, and occasionally to get them silent was a huge buzz. It's not very often that we got 100,000 Indians very quiet because they're losing a game, but on the other occasion when it happened, it would have been a huge buzz for me. And then you had the sort of the traditional grounds, so a chance to play at Lord's. Obviously growing up in Jamaica, my father's generation were besotted with tales of cricket in England and some of these famous grounds. But the buzz was a big grounds, the grounds that had hundreds, thousands of people, and the noise and the clamour and you know that feeling of you against the world, and on occasions when you got it right and you actually got a good result there, to actually get those grounds quiet was worth it. Characters in the West Indies team, that's an easy one. The first one that stands out is Curtly Ambrose. Massive personality, loud, self-assured, confident, very opinionated, but very funny. He would have been the consistent character for the 9 or 10 years that I was around with the squad. And then everybody else played bit roles behind Ambrose. Ambrose meeting the Queen on an occasion that I was there was the funniest thing ever. Plenty of respect, but no respect all at once. And thankfully the Queen remembered him from a previous tour, so didn't take it personally. He actually got her to laugh, which they said was not an easy thing for the Queen at the time. But Ambrose stands out. Desi Haynes, a larger-than-life character who played hard but enjoyed himself off the field and encouraged everybody to do that as a means of stress relief. And Sherwin Campbell, the opposite to Ambrose physically, almost a midget, but a huge personality and had the ability to just energize everybody. He did everything at 90 miles an hour. Sherwin did. Very difficult to room with him, which I had to on a couple of occasions because there's just too much energy in the small confines of a hotel room. But those would be the three that stand out. And then everybody else would have had their moments in and around those three. But Ambrose and the Queen, for me, will be an abiding memory. Getting the Queen, well, by the time the Queen started laughing, we were howling. But at Buckingham Palace, I think it was could have been a 95 tour, but very, very interesting watching that dynamic between Curtly Ambrose and the Queen of England.
Bold, played it on. Not a
Who did I admire most? Different people for different reasons. I think I'd start with Courtney Walsh, who it wasn't just Courtney's cricket, obviously a great bowler who became even greater when in the second half of his career when I was playing with him. But it was what he had done for me leading up to international cricket, and when I just started. He was like an older brother to quite a few of us in the Jamaica setup. So even before we played international cricket, Courtney had an eye out for quite a few of us who were in a sort of younger cadre coming through. And then he sort of kept me on the straight and narrow in the first few years of international cricket. You know, if there was ever a time when I threatened to leave the beaten path, Courtney was one of those who was very close behind me, keeping me in line and making sure that the decisions that I made were good decisions. And I look back now and I'm very grateful for having Courtney there in the background, because I could see myself at the time having made or getting myself ready to make pretty ordinary decisions. So I'd start with Courtney, and then Ambrose for what he was as a bowler and as a person, Brian Lara to play with one of the greatest batsmen ever, and to do it from youth cricket right through, but obviously went on into international cricket, and to have had some good partnerships with him as well was quite exciting. And then Chandrapal, I played most of my career with Shiv. Shiv came in as a 19-year-old, but very, very strong mentally. One of the strongest players I've been around. One of the most determined players, one of the most focused players that I've seen. I thought I was focused until I saw Chandrapal, and I realized that he took the word focus to a different level. And it's been great watching how his career has blossomed for the last almost 20, well, I say almost, he has played for 20 years now, which is a credit to him. But those would probably be the people that stand out. Richie Richardson, he captained me for the first 2 or 3 years of international cricket, gave me a lot of support as a youngster coming in, trying to find my feet.
This time he goes for the one that's pitched up, and he's hit it well.
Carl Hooper. I would say it was probably the most pleasing on the eye in terms of his style of batting. Always seemed to have more time than most of us mortals. Don't think he was as consistent as he could have been in the early stage of his career, but he was the only person who would make Curtly Ambrose leave the dressing room, put his music down and watch cricket, which said something, because Curtly did that for nobody else in the time when I toured. Body weight on the... Do it in relation to the ball, Admiral. Yeah? Very good. So we have his head in front. What am I doing currently? Well, I'm 3 years into a relationship with Kent County Cricket Club in England, where I'm head coach. Started there in early 2012. And it's been an exciting period for me. It's been quite a challenge as well. Kent is one of the smaller counties in England, but with a rich cricketing history. And we're trying to get Kent cricket back into the top echelons of English cricket. It's exciting for me because I think we have a cadre of young players who have come through the Kent system and are now at that point where they're beginning to establish themselves as first team and first class players. Maybe every county says the same thing, but I can only speak about the ones that I know. They're very talented, they're young, they have good attitudes, and I think it's a good recipe for future success.
It's been scored. New South Wales were none for 62 against the Redbacks in their first game. You can make it none for 68. I think it might have just scared her. This might be the upper deck. Oh, just about there.
T20 cricket versus Test cricket. I don't see Test cricket going anywhere for now. You still have a fantastic amount of interest in the 5-day format, especially when the top teams are playing around the world. The interest not just from the teams and their supporters, their immediate supporters, but as a cricket lover, to watch India playing Australia now and you know, your Ashes series and the South Africans playing against Australia, Dale Steyn versus Mitchell Johnson. even when they're wearing white clothes, there's a huge interest around the world, and I don't think that is going to die anytime soon. T20 cricket certainly has brought quite a few more people to the game, and I think it's been good for cricket. It's made the international and the first class schedules more packed. So I think there's a case to say it needs to be, the cricket scheduling overall needs to be planned properly so that we don't have players who attempt to play 3 formats and then by the time they get to the mid-20s they're having to choose one, or they're retiring before they get to 30 when you think that they had enough talent to play until they're easily into the late 30s. If that happens, I think it will be a win-win situation to have the 3 formats, which I think all 3 carry a certain level of excitement, certainly for me. But you want to get the best out of your players. You want your product to be the best product possible. And for me, the best cricket product is to have your best players ready to play, fit enough to play and wanting to play. So it might be that they have to regulate just how much of each format of the game gets played. But I'm sure the market will correct and self-correct as time goes on, and we'll eventually get to the right formula and the right balance where we will get that, because the market will demand that. But I'm still very confident that all 3 versions will continue, certainly for the foreseeable future. And I am happy for the introduction of T20 cricket. Like I said, I'm biased. I like to be entertained, and I find that Chris Gayle hitting 6s and 4s, and your Dale Steins bowling Yorkers and slow ball bumpers, I find that quite exciting and very, very entertaining. So I'm looking forward to more years ahead of being entertained across all 3 formats.
Keeps going like this. Here he goes over the offside this time, or just inside the rope.
Current state of West Indies cricket, we are struggling. There's no 2 ways about it. We're struggling both on the field, but I think as a result of what is happening off the field. I think for many years, even while we were enjoying unparalleled success as an international team in the late 70s and 80s, I think a large part of that success came through development processes that were informal. These processes weren't controlled by the WICB. So if I look at my own development, what I gained from playing club cricket here at Sabina Park with a club team, not a first class team, a club team that had test and first class players was a massive learning environment for me, but it wasn't planned. West Indies board didn't plan that, but it existed. It was informal. Club cricket now doesn't offer that to a youngster in Jamaica anymore, and it hasn't been replaced by anything that can deliver what that environment delivered for me. So looking at it from a development point of view, there was a lot that was in existence but not planned for many, many years. And unfortunately, when the sport got to the point where you now don't just arrive at a good international team, you develop players, you create players, you make players, and that process starts from very early. We were way behind the 8 ball, and also a lot of our development for international players during those glory years happened overseas. A lot of our players learnt the game, became more professional in their output and their attitude and their approach by playing outside the Caribbean. And for one reason or another, those opportunities became more and more limited as time went on. And again, have they been replaced? I don't think so. So the whole aspect of developing young players in the Caribbean, we are behind certainly the first world countries, the first world cricket playing countries, your Australias, your Englands and your South Africas in terms of development. The good thing is that we've recognized this. I do think the board have recognized this. I think there is now a will, but I think they're now trying to find the most effective way given the resources or lack of that exist in the Caribbean. It's always going to be a challenge, but for me the good thing is that we have the raw material here. I was fortunate enough to be involved in Jamaica's cricket quite intimately for about 3 years, going back about 3 or 4 years ago. And one of the things that struck me was that we still have raw material, certainly in Jamaica. This whole idea of losing young talent to American sports, I didn't see when I went on the road. The primary school competition in Jamaica has double, triple the amount of players than we had in my time. And the standards that I saw up to under 15, under 16 would be comparable to anything anywhere else in the world. How we pull that through from 14, 15 to 21, 22, we are definitely behind. In many areas and for many different reasons, too long to get into here. But that for me is the next big, massive challenge for West Indies cricket, is how to take the goal out the ground and polish it in that period, the 14 to 21 period, so that we can present young, capable international players and not take them into international cricket before they're ready. Hope that they learn and then more sink, and the ones that do swim don't start performing until they're 29. It would be nice to produce 22 and 23-year-olds who are capable of standing up on the world stage and performing consistently. Current players that I admire, the one that stands out for obvious reasons is Chanderpaul. Been around for a long time, but just his longevity.
Catch, it's a cry and taken. First test wicket for Sunil Narine.
I quite like Sunil Narine. I think he's something different, he's special. And he's been bamboozling international batsmen now for the last couple of years. So those would be the two that stand out. I think there's a lot of talent and potential around young Bravo, the younger Bravo, people like Andre Russell, Pollard. But the consistency, they haven't become consistent players yet. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for them because I think they're exciting talents. But they still have to cross that threshold and become consistent in their performances. But for me, Shiv and young Sunil are the two who I would say you know what you're going to get from them day in, day out. And in their own ways, they're pretty special.
Another test 100 for Shiv Narine Chanderpaul.
Chris Gayle, seems to be a divided opinion. I don't know if I'm the right person to ask about Chris because I have an obvious bias. Chris started his career under me both for Jamaica and the West Indies. And he's one of those players where as captain you just love the fact when you look behind you that you see him walking out, because he never stood down from anybody or any situation. And I've seen that attitude win games at the different levels. He certainly does things his way. He's an individual in terms of how he produces. But the bottom line for professional cricket is to produce. And he's produced now for 10 years. He's carved certainly a niche for himself in T20 cricket.
Into the David man getting underneath it. He won't get it. Just enough to make the run.
But even in Test cricket, his Test statistics will rival any of the great West Indian batsmen, bar maybe Lauren, Gary Sobers and maybe Viv, which is saying something for him. I'm only sorry that physically he's getting to a point in his career now where maybe the years of being on the road are beginning to take a toll. But fantastic kid to watch over the years.
Score very quickly. You know what Chris Carlton do? He's one of the best T20 batsmen in world cricket.
I'm a bit selfish. I like to be entertained, and if Chris is nothing else, he's a supreme entertainer. And I'm keeping my fingers that he will continue to entertain us for quite a few more years.
Straight downtown. Don't even worry about it. It's gone a long way back.
Changing anything, if I could wave a magic wand, again, we went through so many changes, certainly on the cricket field, over the course of my career. I remember when we started, nobody had sponsors on shirts, and you could literally wear any piece of clothing you wanted into an international game, and that certainly changed by the time I finished. A lot of rules and regulations changed, but I was quite happy with all of the experiences, to be honest. I don't think I missed anything. The only thing probably now is it would have been nice. I played a little bit of T20 after I retired, and there was a question, what would it have been like to have played T20 internationally? I think I could have evolved into a T20 player, given the opportunity. But how many test matches and one-day internationals, the traveling, even when you had bad tours, getting beat, not scoring runs, to me, I've had the opportunity, thankfully, to use most of these experiences in different roles since then, whether it be in media or as a coach. So there's no regret, really. I think it's more how you use these experiences that make it count. And I'm actually quite happy for even some of the not so good ones that were not so good at the time, but have certainly come to serve a positive end since then. So regrets, no. Hard times, yes. Difficult times, yes. You quote unquote blood, sweat and tears along the way, but generally very happy with what happened.